In this video, I'm going to show you some steps to guide you through adding and subtracting rational expressions, as well as restricting the denominator of any rational expressions that we come across. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is go over some steps for adding and subtracting rational expressions. The first step whenever you're adding, subtracting, or multiplying or dividing is to try and factor and common factor every numerator and denominator. Alright, so there we have it. The second step is going to be to restrict. Okay, we want to make sure that we don't start canceling anything before we restrict. Okay, third step, you're going to look in each individual fraction, and if you can cancel something with in a numerator with something in the denominator in each individual fraction, you can do that. Okay, so look for anything that you can reduce or cancel. Okay, if not, the main thing that you need when you're adding and subtracting rational expressions is a common denominator. Okay, so you're going to create a common denominator. Okay, and when you've created that common denominator, you're going to merge the fractions into one fraction. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to factor or actually, sorry, not factor, you're going to FOIL the top. So FOIL the numerator. Okay, and simplify. Okay, gather like terms. Okay, and then lastly, you want to check to see if you can factor or common factor after you have FOILed and simplified. Okay, sometimes you won't be able to do this, and if you're not able to do this, you're basically at the last step. Okay, and once you've factored or common factored, can you cancel any further? Cancel or reduce. Okay, so you want to check that as well. Okay, look back to make sure that you've got all your restrictions, things like that. Any denominator that occurs anywhere along the way should be restricted. Okay, so here's our first example. I'm going to start with the first step, and that is to factor or common factor any numerator or denominator that we can. Okay, the fraction on the left-hand side, we can't really do anything with that. However, we can do something with the denominator on the right-hand side. Okay, so this we would have to factor doing hard trinomial factoring, so we're looking for two things that multiply to -12 and add to 11. When we find those two numbers, we'll split up 11 into those two numbers and factor by grouping. Okay, this ends up factoring into x plus 3 and 4x minus 1. Okay, and I'm just going to bracket up this 4x minus 1 so that we know that it's kind of like a group that's together. Okay, so that's our first step. Second step is to restrict. So I'm going to just come off to the side here, and I'm going to start my list. Okay, so I have to restrict all things on the denominator here, these three things. So for our first one, 4x minus 1, this is a restriction of 1/4. And for our second one, x plus 3, that's a restriction of -3. And this are the same, so they have the same restriction. Okay, so there we go. Restricting is done. We're going to check and see for step number 3 to look and see if we can reduce or cancel anything before we find a common denominator. Okay, I can't cancel anything with this numerator and this denominator, and there's also nothing I can cancel out with these either. Remember, I can't cancel out these 4's because there's a subtraction sign here, and we can't cancel out separate terms if that's the case. Okay, so I'm not actually canceling anything here. Now I'm going to find a common denominator. So the left-hand fraction has a denominator of 4x minus 1, but the right-hand one also has an x plus 3. So all I'm going to do here is multiply the bottom and top of this fraction by x plus 3. Okay, each one needs what the other one has. So this one is just missing the x plus 3. Okay, and we're going to merge this all into one fraction. So just combine. Okay, usually I leave this in brackets. It doesn't matter as much when you're adding, but if this were subtraction, it would actually need to be applied to both things in these brackets. So it's good practice just to leave this guy in brackets, the second numerator. And then when you expand, you can take care of that. Okay, so we only write the denominator once. Don't write this twice. We found a common denominator so that we can put them all together under one denominator. Okay, the next step that we're going to do on the next page is we are going to FOIL the top. Okay, so let's start with FOILing out our 4. We'll get 4x plus 12 on the top here. And if I'm just distributing the positive in, those terms remain unchanged. So it'll be plus 8x minus 15. And our denominator will stay the same. Okay, we are going to simplify, so I'm going to gather like terms, 4x and 8x, and 12 and negative 15. 4x and 8x makes 12x, and 12 minus 15 gives us negative 3. Okay, our next step was to check the top and see if we can factor or common factor. Okay, so looking at this top right here, we want to ask ourselves, can we factor this? Can we common factor this? Because it's only 2 terms, there's no way that we're going to be able to factor the trinomial, because it's a binomial. So we can't use trinomial factoring, but we can use common factoring. And we will take out a 3, and we'll be left with 4x minus 1. Okay, factored form is simplest form, so even if the factoring is not going to help you cancel anything, it's still good practice to have it in factored form. Okay, in this case it does help us because we can see now that we can cancel out 4x minus 1 and 4x minus 1. So we can simplify our expression a little bit more. Now we're left with 3 over x plus 3. Okay, and you can leave the brackets there or you can remove the brackets. Okay, again, we want to make sure that we don't cancel separate terms because of this plus sign, so I don't want to cancel out the 3's. Okay, we have to actually leave them as they are. Okay, and our restrictions were that x could not equal 1/4 and negative 3. So that would be my full answer right there. Okay, for our last example, we're going to do a subtraction question, and it's very, very similar, except for that we just need to watch out for this negative here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by factoring or common factoring all numerators. So for the top one here, we're looking for 2 things that multiply to negative 12 and add to 8. So we will get... Actually, that is not factorable. So if we can't factor it, that's okay. We'll move on to the next one. So let's just rewrite it. And this should have a minus. Okay, we're going to use long factoring for this, so factoring a hard trinomial. 2 things that multiply to negative 6, so a times c, and add to our b value, which is negative 5. Okay, so you get negative 6 and positive 1, and you want to split this value into those 2 values. So negative 6x and positive 1x, and then factor by grouping. Okay, so you're going to get x subtract 3 and 2x plus 1. And we just have minus 3 over x subtract 3. Second step would be to restrict, so I need to restrict all denominators here, so x cannot equal 3. Okay, that's also the restriction for this, so we've taken care of both of those in one. And this one is going to be a restriction of negative 1/2. Okay, so that's our restriction list. Now I'm going to find a common denominator, so each side again needs what the other side has. They both have an x minus 3, but the right side is missing a 2x plus 1, and I'm going to make sure that I multiply that into the top and the bottom. Okay, we're going to merge now that we have a common denominator. Okay, and all over the same denominator. Okay, FOIL the top. Okay, so we're just going to expand and simplify the top. So we'll get x squared plus 8x minus 12 minus 6x minus 3. same denominator. Leave your denominator in factored form. Okay, doesn't need to be FOILed because it's already fully factored. Okay, we're going to gather like terms here. So x squared doesn't have anything to be added to. 8x minus 6x is 2x, and 12 minus 3 is negative 15. Or negative 12 minus negative 3, I should say. Okay, we're not quite done yet. We need to check to see if we can factor or common factor our new numerator here. It may help us cancel something in the bottom. So are there two things that multiply to negative 15 and add to 2? Okay, the answer for this would be yes. Positive 5 and negative 3 fit that condition. So we'll continue on the next page here. Positive 5, so x plus 5, and negative 3. And we had x minus 3 and 2x plus 1. Okay, and now we can actually see that there's one further thing that we can reduce here, which are the x minus 3's. Okay, so we're going to be left with x plus 5 over 2x plus 1. Okay, with restrictions, x cannot equal negative 1/2 and positive 3. So that's our full answer. Okay, again, make sure that you're not canceling separate terms here. There are plus signs in between both of these, so nothing can be reduced, especially these x's. You might be tempted to do that, but that is actually the final answer there.